I'd like to call the meeting to order. We're on item E, reconvene to open session. There's no action from the closed session. So on to item F. Call to order and pledge allegiance. Could all please stand and join me in the flag. Ready? Begin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, we're on to item G, public comment on agenda items and non-agenda items and petitions. This is the time and place to address the school board. State law prohibits the board from acting on issues not included on the agenda. However, requests may be made for discussion of specific topics at subsequent meetings. Upon recognition by the board, President of the board, please come forward and identify yourself before speaking. The Board of Education reserves the right to limit speaking time to 3 minutes or less per individual. I have no speaker cards. Is there anyone else that cares to address the board at this time? Hearing none, we're moving on to item H, action. Item 1, approve findings and recommendations from the Alternative Governance Board, and materials are provided. I need a motion.
So moved.
Second. Okay, discussion. Michael?
I like your jacket, Mike.
The other one.
I like the tie. I like the tie.
Ladies and gentlemen.
We're going to quite the
That's how you normally dress it.
Okay.
You dressed nice.
Yes. Rough crowd. Now we can move on to the serious matter at hand.
Trying to gain my composure here. The Alternative Governance Board met earlier and took the staff's recommendation and adopted it for submission to the board. And so tonight, what will be presented to you will be the Alternative Governance Board findings, evidences, and recommendations, which then in turn will ask you to direct the superintendent accordingly to implement those recommendations. The way we're going to present it to you tonight is I will give you an overview, walk you through the binder so that I can highlight some of the salient parts of the binder. And then Todd will come up and share with you on the overhead the findings and recommendations for PIRU. And then Carol will come up and share with you the findings and recommendations for San Cayetano. And then finally, Anna Merriman is a member of the AGB board. She will also come up and share with you the findings and recommendations for the middle school. And then we will end with the next steps that the schools will be taking.
I have a question. Dolores, do you have to leave early this evening? Or do you want to stay to this again? Do you? I'd like to introduce someone, if that's okay with you, Michael. You know, we have had the privilege the last 2 months or so to have someone join our team as a coach for our middle school. And I'm pretty familiar with this young lady since we basically started our administrative careers one after the other over in Moinimi. And she was my biggest competition. She's extremely competitive. Takes no prisoners, but calls you love bug, and she's putting you under. And I know that because my son had her as a principal. And so she comes with really great skills. I was assistant principal when she was a teacher coming from Pasadena at the time, teaching math. Was it math or science? Huh? Chemistry. No, but no, at Wainimi it wasn't chemistry.
No, math.
Math. So anyway, so we started our career together, and she ended up being one of the best I've ever seen as far as her trade as a principal. And she ended up at that middle school, first being in California Distinguished School, and then becoming a Blue Ribbon School in both math and science, which is an achievement that not many schools are able to do. She's a great coach. We were trained together under the same superintendent in the same kind of very intensive training. And so I asked her if she would come out of retirement, and, oh, she went to the district office for a couple of years too. I asked her if she'd come out of retirement, and she hesitated, hummed and hawed, and like typical Dolores Carn, asked me a million questions. So I gave her the answers. I gave her the answers, and she said, well, let me think about it. And then we talked again, and she said, yes, I would. We started off with, I wanted her out here 5 days, a week to work. She started out with 1 day. And then, so I thought, well, then let's do, what did you say, Tom? No, I said 4. 4, 3?
You said 3. We were trying to.
Yeah, and he said 5. And so we settled on she wanted to only do 1 day. And she ended up doing 2 days. And because she enjoys helping people. And Ellen said she's thankful that she has Dolores, and Dolores says, Ellen, it's a pleasure to work with you. So I think together as a team, with all the experience that Dolores has and the enthusiasm that Ellen has, I think we're going to have some wonderful things for our middle school kids. Would you like to say a few words, Dolores? You don't have to.
Well, you know, you never offer me a mic.
That's why I said, are you sure?
Just one or 2 words. I hear you laughing. To the board president and board members and district staff, it has been delightful. When I say delightful, I mean it, because I could have said something different. It has been a joy to see, number 1, a middle school in action, regardless of those needs and findings that are in the report from AGB, an opportunity for a school to become a Blue Ribbon School. Ellen Green is one that I think that has all of those traits that you want in the middle school. In addition to that, there is an opportunity for you to feel proud that whatever comes of this as a result of the AGB findings, rest assured that I will give you the best that I have, but I know the best will come forth for your children. And having said that, be careful of Alan this year.
We'll talk later.
Thank you very much, Dolores. It really has been a pleasure to work with Dolores and see Dolores get involved in middle school with her experience and background, and now working very closely with Ellen to make sure that the recommendations the AGB board has given them would be nursed and brought to fruition. So we thank you, Dolores, quite a bit. Thank you.
She's not going anywhere for a while.
For a while, too. Okay. Well, we're glad for that.
She makes that comment again.
Before I walk you through the binder, I need to really commend the 3 schools that we visited. It's not been easy for them. You know, they have come to this process, some of them kicking and screaming, but their hearts have been in the right place. They really want to do what's best for the students in our district. What they're waiting for is direction. What they're waiting for is the content that would give substance to what they're doing in the classroom. Again, I commend them because it's not been an easy task. They have welcomed us. They have certainly been candid with their comments whenever they have the opportunity to do that. And we continue as a board to work with the teacher group in order to make sure that the recommendations we're presenting before you are things that would allow them to adjust to it and be able to do them. You know, I have not heard them say they don't want to do it. What they have been asking is, give us time to do it. Give us a training that needs to be done, you know, and we'll deliver for you. But keep working with us, because they really want to make a difference in our schools. And if anything is going to change that will truly make a difference, it has to be in the classroom. But I also must add that, you know, some of them felt like, well, the onus has been dumped on our shoulders. You know, that we are the ones who are looked at based on the report of the AGB as the ones who have not delivered. Well, I have to say this, that I think the responsibility belongs to the whole organization. Not just to the teachers, but the whole organization. If the kids have been failed, it's not because of the teachers alone, it's not because of the administrators alone, it's all of us here. We own that responsibility. And what we need not do is point at each other. We need to own our piece of the responsibility and say, I'm going to do it better. Now, the reason that most of these recommendations, if not all of them, have been directed in the classroom is because that has been the emphasis of the AGB disciplines. We did not look at the history of the school. We did not look at, you know, the district staffing. Not at all. We focused on what's going on in the classroom, because that is where the kids experience teaching and learning day in and day out. And so that's the piece we looked at. But we don't want to be misunderstood into giving the message that the responsibility falls heavily in the classroom. We share it all. We share it all. Having said that, let me refer to the binder that you have in front of you. It's divided into three parts. The first part, you have Pyru's report. The second part, we have San Cayetano. And then we're ending with the middle school. I'm just going to use Pyru as an example and highlight certain pages and give you the rationale where those pages are in this book. The page that says Alternative Governance Board, and then you have the 2011 Fall Report. The names here are not necessarily all of the members of the Governance Board. These are individuals who helped us put it together. I have to apologize, we left out Anna Merriman. Anna is here. Anna is here. She'll be coming up and she'll be introducing herself to you.
She's going to be on the board too, is she?
She is on the board.
I thought she just copped out. I was going to get mad.
No. We had our meeting and she got lost. But we had already started our meeting and we were doing an organizational meeting. Since she wasn't there, we elected her president. So it took her a few moments to get her composure when she sat down and told her she's president. She didn't want to take the gavel either. She kept giving it to Todd. Keep going, you're doing a good job. Then the next page, you have the introduction. This gives you an idea of the responsibility of the AGB. And if you notice where it says responsibilities, the progressive changes in terms of the responsibilities of the AGB board. And where we are right now is because we've looked at and visited 3 schools that are 5 years or over 5 years, being PI, where it says here, school in year 5 of program improvement, this is where we are with the AGB group. The AGB's role shifts from advisory to supervisory. So we're no longer, because of where the schools are, no longer sitting down and advising them. The findings are really directive, but the directive cannot come from us. We are as a subcommittee of the board. The directive has to come from you. So we're giving this to you as a recommendation, and that through the superintendent, it then needs to be implemented. And then we also talked about the process. Very extensive process we went through. We met with the staff to introduce ourselves. We gave them the calendar. We gave them a schedule of when we were going to come. We have a calendar. And we also gave them a letter which itemized what we were going to look for, so there would be no surprises. And the process is outlined there for you. We visited, all the schools at least 2 days. The middle school, we visited them 3 times. And we went into each classroom, and we visited each classroom at least twice. And we were in each classroom a minimum of 30 minutes. Now, you and I know that when you walk into a classroom, the first 5 to 10 minutes, you can pick up, what's going on in the classroom. And to stay there that at least 30 minutes, you can really document a lot. Then you have members of the governance board, the next page. Those are the official members. Then we have the adjunct or alternates. In case any of the members who cannot be there during our meetings, then we have the alternates who will take place so that we would have a quorum. The next page is a letter we gave the 3 schools. This is a letter introducing ourselves. We gave this letter, not in the mail, but we went to a staff meeting. We read the letter to them, and then we also bulleted what we were going to look for. And this happened a month before the first visit took place. So the staff knew what we were looking for. The staff knew what we were going to expect. So there were no surprises at all. After the letter, you have the calendar. And, we have done our first official visit. Between now and the next visit in April, or in the spring, we're going to do what we call dipsticking, because we would like to find out how they're progressing in terms of implementing the recommendations you will approve of tonight. Incidentally, as a board, you can take any of the recommendations, change them, delete them. That's your prerogative as a board. But as a group, we strongly feel that we're bringing this forward to you because that's what we saw. And these are the things we feel need to happen if we're going to move the district forward. And then, next page is the essential program components. This has become the structure whereby we operated. When we did the observations, this was the background for those observations. And when you listen to the presentations related to the findings and recommendations, we anchored it to these essential standards. These are from the state, and these are the ones that the state says you ought to look at when you're looking at the change process on any campus as it relates to program. So that takes care of the first major tab. Now the next tab, you have your commendations, findings, evidence, and recommendations. Now we itemize the recommendations for you, or the findings, or the commendations rather, for you. We share this with the staff. And then we go into the findings. Now the findings, each of them are divided into 3 sections. One, we give you the findings, and then we give you the evidence. Where did we find it? What evidence did we have to document that particular finding? And then we give you, based on the findings, the recommendation. And the recommendation specifically reads, recommendation to the FUSD board to direct the superintendent to implement the following recommendations from the alternative governance board. Then you've got the recommendations itemized below. Also, when the presentation is given to you, a number of the findings will overlap because there were some commonalities in terms of what we saw. Also, the ones that you will see double asterisks are the ones that we extracted, and we have suggested to the principal that if you have 15 findings and we extracted double asterisks, 5 of them or 7 of them, that means that you need to pay close attention to those, because those are the key. Not that you don't have to address all of them, but you better address those that are double asterisks. The next tab, you have a number of data points that we used and consulted. We have, of course, the data regarding the PI status of each of the schools of the district. And then you have the next set of data, the walkthroughs. Okay. What we did is and I'll show you the documentation we use for the walkthroughs. And then at the end, we always had, if possible, majority of them, 2 of us would go in. And then after the walkthrough, we would come out and we would tabulate and put it into some numerical computation so that we can put it into a graph. Let me refer you to the first graph. And this has to do with Pyro's time on task. This is key to the walkthrough. So what this says is that you have 45%, it says intentional instruction and guided practice. So we looked at what was going on in the classroom. In this particular instance, what happened in terms of the presentation? Okay. Did the teacher use at least 2 of the methodologies to communicate to the kids? Did they use verbal and visual? Was there auditory? Was there kinesthetic tactile? Did they use any of those 2 senses? Then we recorded as they use, this as an effective ways to communicate. We're not even talking here about the content yet. We're just talking about the strategy they use. So you're looking at 45% intentional instruction and guided practice. And then you have independent group work with teachers, 31%. And then we broke it down. So this tells you how much time school-wide, not individual, but school-wide, all the classrooms we visited, how much time is being spent in instruction and guided practice, how much time is spent in interruption. If you notice, look at interruption, 12%. Okay. That has to be looked at by the school. That's high, as a school. That doesn't mean individual team, no. As a school, we noted that interruptions were going on with instructional time in the classroom. So they need to reduce that. So what we're looking for now, as an example, is when we go back in the spring, we're going to do the same thing again. We're going to tabulate. And then we're going to come back and share with you, we've seen significant improvement. That's what we're hoping would happen. We've seen that this chart here has been significantly different and that more time on task teaching is occurring as a whole on this campus. That's what we're going to come back and share with you next time. And then we broke down some more of the walkthroughs. Here you have a variety of instructional methods. What were they using? We're looking at Marzano. And he's right here, Marzano strategies. So what are they using? In contrast, you get an idea of what's going on as a whole on that particular campus. And then classroom procedures, how did that shape? Now, this next chart, Bloom's higher order thinking. It's one of the most, time on task, this one is one of the most significant charts. Okay. Across the board, there's a need for the district to really look at moving our students to that higher level order thinking skills. The Common Core is coming, folks. 2014, 2015, 3rd grade to 8th grade will be tested, and then 11th grade. They're key to higher order thinking skills. The last 3, analysis, synthesis, evaluation. And we've got to start from kindergarten all the way out. And our teachers are welcoming this, by the way. In one of the schools, after a presentation, the teacher and the principal reported this to me, went online, downloaded, Bloom's taxonomy and how to use it, and just recently gave a staff development to the staff on it. So they have a heart, folks. Your teachers have a heart to make a difference. But this is the key. What we're looking for the next time we visit is that this chart is reversed. You have a higher, now you have to have knowledge and comprehension. Kids have to have knowledge in order for them to analyze. But it has to be skewed higher towards the end. And that cannot happen by accident. It can only happen if lesson plans are planned properly and it's thought through ahead of time. Otherwise, the tendency is to ask knowledge and comprehension questions only. Next one, see, and then next is a teacher guide to self-assess and so forth. So that kind of gives you an idea of some of the charts here. And then we have some more testing results for you. Oh, by the way, I want to emphasize this. Strategies for English learners, because that's also part of what we're looking for. You know, the district is 1/3 EL. 1/3 EL. And as of this moment, that's a group. The needs are not being addressed the way we ought to address them. Not that teachers don't want to do it, not that the teachers don't care, but what's happening, I think, is they don't have the tools to do it. Give you an example. We don't have as a district, and it's not the teacher's fault, we don't have as a district a uniform, unified curriculum to teach EL. We're in the process of addressing that now. And we also have a group called newcomers, and we don't have a program that sufficiently addresses the needs of the newcomers. These are students who've been here less than 1 year, or less than 2 years. Okay. This is a need we have. We need to take a look at that. Then you keep flipping, you will find the blank form that we use for the walkthroughs, that we eventually calculated. Attached to it also, you will see their site plan. This was presented to the board, but in case you wanted to know what data points we used. And then where they had the curriculum audit, there were 3 schools audited, 2007. High Root, the middle school, and the high school. 3 schools that were audited. We also looked at that data point. What is interesting, folks, is this. What they found out in 2007 matches closely what we found out today, 2011. Okay? A lot of questions need to be asked. But nonetheless, we use that as a data point as well. So it's just another data point to validate what we have seen. Because someone would say, well, you were just there for 2 days. How do you know that? Well, that's another data point that shows that, you have that. You have the plan, and then the next tab you will have is the sample lesson plans. Sample lesson plans. The teachers have been asking for that. What does this lesson plan look like that you guys are looking for? So in their recommendations, we included sample lesson plans. Now, it's very crucial, please, that you as a board understand that these lesson plans are not exemplars. They're not the ideal lesson plans. In fact, always the best lesson plan is the next one you're going to create. Okay? Because lesson plans are not static. A good lesson plan is someone you always massage and change, because the conditions in the classroom are constantly in flux. Okay? Things happen outside of the school, things happen in the classroom, teachers change. It's always in constant flux. So what we wanted them to do is use this as a guide, not copy it, but as a guide. And then we gave them bullets that we said, you ought to consider these items when you're putting your lesson plans together. This is not easy. Some teachers have been spending a lot of time doing this. It's new. It's a new experience for many of them. And, like I said, the AGB board has been in communication with the teachers group, to work things out so that they move through the process with ease. And I can say this, it's not easy work. I wish we could say it's easy, it's not. It's student achievement. It's never an easy work. It takes time, it takes planning, and it never is, because the stakes are very high. We're looking at the future of the kids in this district. And it's worth investing the time and effort for their future. Okay, so you have, sample lesson plans. And then we conclude the section with next steps. What we want them to do is not only take a recommendation, but we want them to act on it. And when we come back, this becomes the basis for part of what we're going to look at. So there's a high level of accountability in terms of mapping out the implementation of the plan. Then we gave them a template of what we would like for them to do. We made it easier for them because we have the recommendations. Unless you change any of them, then we will change this on the form. And then they just have to tell us how they're going to implement it, when will it be done, and we will take a look at this as the diff state throughout the year. So hope that gives you an overview, highlight of what's in the binder. And again, I have to thank the AGG group, Carol, Jennifer, Todd, Anna, and unfortunately, Dr. Michael Babb could not be here tonight. He would have wanted to be here, but his wife is going through surgery tonight, so he could not be here. Perhaps next time around, you'll have a chance to meet him again. And my office staff, Gilda and Connie, I cannot thank them enough. I don't know how many times we changed this. And even tonight after the last minute, we're making changes. It's an excellent document. It's a very thorough document. And it only will matter if it's implemented. So thank you so much. And I'm going to introduce Todd, who will walk you through the findings and recommendation for Byron, followed by Carol, who will be doing the findings and recommendation for San Cayetano, and then it will be anchored by Anna Barrington.
I'm going to start off with accommodations for Pyro School.
Oh, the tab. It will be the findings and recommendation.
Tab 3.
Oh, I went to sleep.
Just like me.
Well, I'm going to pick up the pace real quick.
Yeah, that's good. Do that, Coach.
While we're waiting for this to form, I also need to highlight the input of the principals. They have been very instrumental in moving this process forward. You have excellent principals in the district, and it's just a joy to work with them. And, really get to know them, that their desire is for all kids under the responsibility of a quality education. And that has been achieved as well.
PowerPoint should be slow, be the top slow. Oh, this one. See that clicker works?
There we go.
Cool. Did you click it? They're trying to get it to the, okay.
Okay, so I'm going to start with commendations. We're going to go through all three schools. We'll take turns reading through. So tell me to slow down if I'm going too fast. Basically, commendations. Teachers used praise and recognition of students, implemented daily routines in the classroom, delved, probed, and gave clues to support student learning, used a variety of strategies in the classroom, provided relevant and accurate information in the lessons, used clear enunciation and correct grammar during the presentation, acknowledged the need for professional development. Students were well behaved in the classroom and were welcoming to the AGV outside of the classroom. As far as the staff at the site, the classrooms and the school grounds were very clean and orderly. Okay, finding number one is a double asterisk, high importance. The majority of lessons observed were teaching grade level standards but did not teach to the level of rigor expected. 24% of the lessons observed were teaching standards below grade level. And this was evidenced through walkthroughs and CST scores.
Excuse me, if there's something here that you need further explanation, we'll be glad. Just stop and we'll get back to this one.
So the recommendation to the FUSD board is to direct the superintendent to implement the following. Ensure that lessons teach the grade level standard with appropriate rigor. For example, if the standard expects students to analyze, make sure that the lesson prepares them to analyze, not identify or describe. Ensure that standards are measured in a timely manner through data provided from common, formative, and summative assessments. Plan staff development to continue building capacity in data-wise in order to determine the effectiveness of instructional practice as measured against mastery of grade level standards as demonstrated on the common assessments. And then for this finding, and under each one, we label what essential program components this covers. And this is standard 4, 6, 7, and 8. Finding number 2. While most classrooms were doing direct instruction, a number of classrooms were not doing high quality, intentional direct teaching necessary to ensure students have access to the content of the lesson as observed through the use of textbooks, workbooks, dittos, and a misuse of technology. In parentheses, textbook and workbook pages on document camera as direct instruction. High quality, intentional direct instruction is designed to instruct by communicating new information, fostering skill development, or otherwise enabling students to meet required state standards through strategies that include modeling and interactive group instruction, such as frequent verbal or nonverbal responses, think, pair, share, delves, probes, gives clues that accomplishes the objective of the lesson. This is directly related to response to intervention, tier 1, good teaching with differentiated instruction. Evidence from walkthroughs and lesson plans. The recommendation to the board is to direct the superintendent to implement the following. Ensure that intentional direct teaching is implemented in the classroom with fidelity to the objective and standard in the lesson, and that the lesson engages all students with an emphasis on all. EPC 4 and 6. Finding number 3 is a double asterisk. While many classrooms had learning goals posted, it was not used in a meaningful manner to inform students what they were to learn, how they were going to learn it, and how they were going to be assessed to determine that they had learned it. Furthermore, the primary grades needed to emphasize a strong academic component that featured grade level standards-based literacy goals. And this is evidenced through walkthroughs. Recommendation to the board to direct the superintendent to implement the following. Ensure that lessons feature explicit learning goals and are implementing the district pacing guides with fidelity and using board-adopted materials. Ensure that lessons begin with a clear reference to a grade level standard as well as what the expectations are for mastery, followed by direct teaching, modeling or practice, and ending with a summary of that standard. EPC 1, 3, 4, and 6.
Before Todd moves forward, please note the last statement on their findings. The primary grades needed to emphasize a strong academic component that featured grade level standards-based and literacy goals. What we have seen, and the teachers have acknowledged this, is K-2 so crucial that we highlight academic learning for those kids. Because if they don't, they move through the system with gaps. And the gaps widen as they move through the system and it's not addressed. It's so critical that that is looked at very carefully across the district. What are we doing in K-2? We're making sure that the curriculum has the appropriate rigor, and that it's emphasizing academic. We've seen some great teaching happening at that level. And there are some classrooms I've seen that I would not mind my kid going into that classroom, because I know by the end of the year, in kindergarten, my kid will be leaving. Some classrooms, we didn't see that. So it's so crucial. This again, across, the schools that we visited. Very important that we pay attention to that.
It's not only unfair to the student, it's also unfair to the teacher at the next grade level. Because they're expecting the student to have a skill set from that grade level. So when they get that child in their grade, especially if it's from 2 or 3 different teachers, then the ability of that teacher to really move that class forward is more difficult. If the student comes in with the same background and same knowledge base, it makes it so much easier and efficiently effective for the teacher to take it to the next level. That's how crucial it is in the primary grades when you start. That is an important grade, like Michael said. And that coordination between, because you always hear that complaint. It's always the high school to the junior high to the 6th grade, and the 6th grade to the kindergarten. It's all their fault. Where there's always a kernel of truth in every cliche. There's always a kernel of truth. Whether it is a complete truth, it may not be, but there's a kernel. And we're going to make sure that that doesn't.
Finding 4 is a double asterisk. The majority of lessons were at the knowledge and comprehension level, and this is evidenced through walkthroughs. Recommendation to the board to direct the superintendent to implement the following. Ensure that students are expected to analyze, synthesize, and evaluate at a much greater frequency or higher percentage. Refer to Bloom's taxonomy, rubric attached. This falls under EPC 4 and 6. Finding number 5, also a double asterisk. Overall, strategies for English learners are used infrequently, as evidenced through walkthroughs. Recommendation to the board to direct the superintendent to implement the following. Work with the teachers to plan staff development that focuses on EL strategies. Monitor implementation of strategies through district-adopted materials such as open court and classroom observations. EPC 1, 2, 4, and 6. Finding 6, consistent use of research-based teaching strategies contained in the walkthrough document appears to be lacking across the curricular areas and in a majority of the classrooms, evidenced by lesson plans, walkthroughs, and curriculum audit. Recommendation to the board to direct the superintendent to implement the following. Develop a staff development plan, a site plan, to train staff on various research-based staff development strategies that support the California standards for the teaching profession. Focus on the following research-based strategies: checking for understanding, verify that all students understand the new concept, compare and contrast, summarizing and note-taking, scaffolding, connecting to prior knowledge, graphic organizers or non-linguistic representation, listens actively to student responses, interactive groups, and analyzing and giving feedback on homework. EPC 4 and 6.
Let me emphasize, you will see the word all in a number of these recommendations. And the reason for that is because it's not uncommon for teachers to ask 2 or 3 kids if they got it. What we're looking for is checking for understanding for all kids. Once a concept has been presented, there are strategies that the teacher can use to check whether all the kids have gotten it. The EL kid, the special ed kid, the regular student, the honors student. There are ways to do that. And schools are now looking into what those strategies are. They're beginning to look at, some of the teachers, they just need refresher courses in those areas. So we're looking for, checking for understanding for all the kids, not just 2 or 3 kids.
Okay. Finding 7. Instructional minutes do not appear to follow the requirement stated in the state frameworks according to the district requirements in language arts, math, and ELD. And this evidence from classroom level schedules. Recommendation to the board to direct the superintendent to implement the following. Work with grade level teams to create a common schedule that aligns with the state frameworks and district requirements, particularly in language arts, math, and ELD. Work with the staff to develop a school-wide schedule that focuses on the core classes in the morning to the extent possible. Extracurricular activities, for example, fun Fridays, principal's recess, holiday activities, need to be carefully considered in order to maximize learning time and should be related to standards, EPC 2 and 8. Finding number 8. The site plan's budget is not clear on how it directly supports academic priorities stated in the plan. And this came from reviewing the site plan. Recommendation to the board to direct the superintendent to implement the following. Review the site plan's budgetary allocation to ensure that it directly supports the academic priorities in the plan. For example, approximately 40% of the categorical salaries have been allocated to maintain the computer lab and library. More specifically, has the computer lab's effectiveness in meeting the academic goals stated in the plan been measured or evaluated? EPC 9. Finding number 9 is a double asterisk. According to staff, there was little vertical articulation taking place with significant discussion on data, nor did grade level collaboration focus on data analysis with consideration of best practices to inform instruction. This came from teacher interviews. Recommendation to the board, direct the superintendent to implement the following. Facilitate structured collaboration that includes both grade level and vertical articulation for all teachers to analyze and utilize the results of data-wise to guide instructional planning and delivery. This is EPC 8. Finding 10, also a double asterisk. The correlation between a thoughtfully prepared lesson plan and the quality of instruction in the classroom is very high. This came from lesson plans and walkthroughs. Recommendation to the board, direct the superintendent to implement the following. Require daily lesson plans on the AGP approved template, monitoring them closely for quality of content, use of research-based teaching strategies, and fidelity to the standards. This covers essential program components 2, 3, 4, and 6. Finding 11, also a double asterisk. In looking at the data, Pyru exceeds the cap of 10% with 11% of their students on IEPs, individual education plans. This came from data report from the special ed department. Recommendation to the board, direct the superintendent to implement the following. Plan staff development to target RTI Tier 1 research-based strategies that are to be used in the classroom. Consider implementing grade level student review teams to discuss every student below proficient on the CSTs or scoring below 70% on assessments, and use appropriate documentation that measures the student's success when strategies are implemented to help the student access curriculum prior to referral to a student study team. Also consider developing an intervention plan for each of these students that has built-in assessment and reteaching. EPC 2, 3, and 7.
I have a question on that. That's a pretty high ratio there of students on IEPs. Or is that something that's general in most schools?
The
amount of
the
students?
average is 10%.
Okay.
We have a couple of schools that exceed that at a much higher percentage.
could a lot of that be with the fact that we had maybe teaching more to the lower standards, and perhaps maybe some of these students who perhaps are on IEP because of their behavior, maybe they've been bored or whatever, and you know.
One of the things that we see with schools that have a strong RTI program is that percentage is lower.
Yeah.
Same demographics.
So that this
Same-
could, all these changes that we're doing then definitely would probably help all this, for these students at this level.
That's
See,
right.
you know, there are 3 tiers, RTI tiers. Tier 1 is you look at the classroom, what you're doing in the classroom. Tier 2 is you get extra additional support, you know, pull the kid out and work with them. Tier 3 is they're getting close to referrals. What's happening is that right now, we don't have a system to hold the kids in Tier 1 and to look at Tier 1 very closely to make sure that we're making the adjustments. What's happening is that the kid misbehaves or something's not quite right, we move them to Tier 2 right away. And then when they're Tier 2, you push them to Tier 3. That's what's happening. I'm addressing some of the comments you made.
Well, the differentiation also that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, we've seen lesson plans, a gifted group, an honors class, the same lesson plan for a regular class. So, you know, we're not pushing, right now we're not pushing the high-end kids higher, you know, and we're missing the low-end kids. So, it's a systemic issue. Again, we just need to look at it and address it. It'll get done. The teachers want to do a good job. It'll get done. It will get done.
Okay. Finding 12 is a double asterisk. 6th grade CST scores were extremely low. There was no fidelity to the middle school 6th grade program and evidence CST scores and class schedule. Recommendation to the board to direct the superintendent to implement the following. Have the PIRU 6th grade teacher, recommend that the PIRU 6th grade teacher collaborate with Fillmore Middle School 6th grade teachers. Collect data, including grades, suspension reports, attendance, CST scores, for the previous PIRU 6th graders currently attending Fillmore Middle School to determine the impact of starting middle school in 7th grade. Do a study on the impact of moving the 6th grade back to Fillmore Middle School. EPCs 1, 2, and 3.
This is a very crucial piece. That's why it's double aspects. Because we have about 22, 25 kids that, you know, and we really need to take a look at what's happening to them when they move to the middle school at the 7th grade, instead of moving them, you know, the 6th grade. So elementary cannot provide a rich curriculum for secondary when you start 6th grade, you know, the classes, the variety of classes that we offer. But they need to have that. So we need to take a look at that very, very carefully. And so we're asking the superintendent to direct the principal to make sure that the reasonable study is done and then an appropriate recommendation be given, you know, to the superintendent regarding this particular issue.
I know we've gone through a couple of paid services for administrators and for teachers for data-wise, so is that progressing because data-wise is becoming helpful important?
Answers process.
And I guess I'm wondering how proficient are we becoming, you know, prepared to move forward with that?
The superintendent, you know, over Thanksgiving break, gave a 2-day in-service on data-wise. Because his goal, and he's directed Ed Services to make sure it happens, is that all the principals are comfortable using data-wise. Because they're the ones who in turn will work with their staffs on data-wise. It was a 2-day training. The first day he had it for administrators, and then the second day he had it for teachers and administrators.
So we're looking at finding key people in these schools, like, you know, at grade level or departments or whatever the case might be, but within students.
You will find that will happen. The natural progression is that principals will train teachers, and teachers become lead teachers, and they will train other teachers. So that's the way that the system normally operates to increase student achievement, is we help each other become better in the class. And I've seen that over and over. So that's the goal, is to train our trainers and then moving forward.
That concludes the findings for Pirate School. So we'll move to Carol to focus on that.
I'm already tired. Yeah, Superintendent Will. I'm already tired. Hopefully Superintendent Will in the morning. Skip that Superintendent.
That's okay.
We'll come back. All right, accommodations. Teachers used a variety of strategies in the classroom, listened actively to students in the classroom, implemented daily routines in the classroom, provided relevant and accurate information in the lessons, used clear enunciation and correct grammar and presentations, made technology available in the classroom, candidly shared the school's growth areas, including a focus on English learners in their site plan. And these things came out of teacher interviews or out of the graphs that you have in front of you.
Can you expand a little bit on the next to last statement there? Can we share the schools grow?
And growth.
I mean, growth obviously, but grow.
Somebody shared this with us, meaning their strengths, the things that they celebrate.
Okay.
Students were well behaved in the classrooms and out. And the classroom and school grounds were, in this case, extremely clean. I don't know if you've ever been in the bathrooms at that kind of time. I recommend a tour. Finding one. The majority of lessons observed were teaching grade level standards below teaching grade level standards, but did not teach to the level of rigor expected. 35% in this particular case of the lessons observed were teaching standards below grade level based on walkthroughs and CST scores. And the recommendations are ensure that lessons teach the grade level standard with appropriate rigor. And for example, if the standard expects students to analyze, make sure the lesson prepares them to analyze, not identify or describe or use. Ensure that standards are measured in a timely manner through data provided from common formative and summative assessments. Plan staff development to continue building capacity and data-wise in order to determine the effectiveness of instructional practice as measured against mastery of grade level standards as demonstrated on common assessments. EPC 4678. Finding 2. While most classrooms were doing direct instruction, a number of classrooms were not doing high-quality, intentional direct teaching necessary to ensure students have access to the content of the lesson, as observed through the use of textbooks, workbooks, dittos, and at times a misuse of technology, meaning textbooks and workbook pages on document cameras as direct instruction, not supplemental. High-quality, intentional direct instruction is designed to instruct by communicating new information, fostering skill development, or otherwise enabling students to meet required state standards through strategies that include modeling, interactive group instruction, such as frequent verbal and nonverbal responses, think, pair, share, delves, probes, or gives clues, and that accomplishes the objective of the lesson. This is, again, directly related to response to intervention, Tier 1, good teaching with differentiated instruction. Walkthroughs and lesson plans with the evidence. The recommendation ensure the intentional direct teaching is implemented in the classroom with fidelity to objective and standard in the lesson, and that the lesson engages all students. EPC 4 and 6. Finding 3, double asterisk for Santana. While many classrooms had learning goals posted, it was not used in a meaningful manner to inform students what they were to learn, how they were going to learn it, and how they were going to be assessed to determine they learned it. So that whole continuous education cycle. Furthermore, the primary grades needed to emphasize a strong academic component that featured grade level, standards-based literacy goals, evidenced through walkthroughs. The recommendation, ensure that lessons feature explicit learning goals and are implementing district pacing guides. District pacing guides with fidelity and using board-adopted materials. Ensure that lessons begin with a clear reference to grade level standards, as well as what the expectations are for mastery, followed by direct teaching, modeling, or practice, and ending with a summary of that standards. EBC 1, 3, 4, 6. Finding 4. The majority of lessons were at the knowledge and comprehension level, evidenced through walkthroughs. The recommendations ensure that students are expected to analyze, synthesize, and evaluate at much greater frequency and higher percentage based on Bloom's taxonomy. And it's in the appendix, EPC 4 and 6. Finding 5, overall strategies for English learners are used infrequently. Evidence is walkthroughs. Recommendation, work with the teachers to plan staff development that focuses on EL strategies. Monitor implementation of strategies through district adopted materials such as open court and classroom observations, EPC 1, 2, 4, and 6. And since there's similarities between the two schools, I'm going a little faster. So if you have questions, just tell me to slow down. Finding 6 in this particular school is a double asterisk. Consistent use of research-based teaching strategies contained in the walkthrough document appears to be lacking across curricular areas and in the majority of classrooms. Evidence lesson plans walk through their curriculum audit. The recommendation, develop a staff development plan, site plan, to train staff on various research-based staff development strategies that support the California standards for the teaching profession. Focus on the following research-based strategies: checking for understanding, verifying that all students understand the concept, compare and contrast, summarizing and note-taking, scaffolding, connecting to prior knowledge, graphic organizers or non-linguistic representation, listens actively to student responses, interactive groups, and analyzing and giving feedback on homework. EPC 4 and 6. Finding 7. Finding 7. Instructional minutes do not appear to follow the requirements stated in the state frameworks according to the district requirements for language arts, math, and ELD. Evidence, classroom level schedules. Recommendations, work with grade level teams to create a common schedule that aligns with the state frameworks and district requirements, particularly in language arts, math, and ELD. Work with staff to develop a school-wide schedule that focuses on the core classes in the morning to the extent possible, and extracurricular activities, fun Fridays, pencils, recess, holidays, holiday activities need to be carefully considered in order to maximize learning. EPC 2 and 8. Finding 8. The site plan's budget is not clear on how it directly supports academic priorities stated in the plan. Review of the site plan was the evidence. The recommendation, use the funds dedicated in the site plan to target specific training and instructional strategies described in the various recommendations stated in the HEB findings. EPC 9. Finding 9 was a double asterisk, so the site thought this was of importance. According to staff, there was little vertical articulation taking place with significant discussion on data, nor did grade level collaboration focus on data analysis with consideration consideration of best practices to inform instruction. Evidence with teacher interviews. Recommendation, facilitate structured collaboration that includes both grade level and vertical articulation for all students to analyze and utilize the results of data-wise to guide instructional planning and delivery. EPC page. Finding 10, double asterisk. The correlation between a thoughtfully prepared lesson plan and the quality of instruction in the classroom is very high. Evidence in lesson plans and walkthroughs. Recommendation, require daily lesson plans on the AGB approved template, monitoring them closely for quality of content, use of research-based teaching strategies, and fidelity to standards. EPC 2, 3, 4, and 6. And 11. 43% of all 2011-2012 district referrals to special education are from San Cayetano. Last year, 24.4% of all district referrals were from San Cayetano. In looking at the data, San Cayetano exceeds the cap of 10% with 12.65% of their students on IEPs. The evidence is a data report from the Special Education Department. The recommendation plans staff development to target RTI Tier 1 research-based strategies that are to be used in the classroom. Consider implementing grade level student study review teams to discuss every student. Below proficient on CSTs or scoring below 70% on assessments, and use appropriate documentation that actually measures how the student's success when the strategies are implemented to help that student access curriculum prior to referral to the student study team. And consider developing an intervention plan for each of these students that has built-in assessment and reteaching. EPC 2, 3, and 7. I think that's the last one.
So Michael, as I look at this report between the two schools, it appears to be a systemic issue district-wide. 90% of the recommendations are similar to school. So it appears that maybe this is a systemic issue.
I suspect that that's a discussion that to take a look at the implications of these findings in terms of the others.
Well, my experience has been that when you're in a district and it's happening, it usually is a systemic issue that the emphasis has been placed wide. Those sites are implementing different things, and nothing is really together. So you will see the same kind of findings pop up all over the place that are not being successful. When you go to highly successful districts, you will find similarities, but the recommendations will be different. They're doing the basic essential things together. There'll be minor adjustments here and there. Here it seems like 90% of the recommendations are exactly the same, which means that we need to focus district-wide on these things, which I think we are. Okay. You're going to introduce?
Oh, yes.
Good evening, I'm Anna Merriman. I have had the good fortune of attending college with Dr. Nishio, so we go way, way back. We won't say how far.
Gold 49.
I'm not sure how we let one of our better teachers get away from Moore Park, one of our best teachers get away from Moore Park. And you stole her over here, but we won't go into that.
She's going to steal some.
And then I have the dubious distinction of having worked with Mr. Prado for several years at Moore Park High School.
She was a good boss.
He has to say that because I'm sitting here. I spent 41 years of my career in public education, most of it in secondary schools, and I was the principal of Moore Park High School and ended my career as the assistant superintendent of instruction at Moore Park. So that's my background. I retired and raised my hand when I shouldn't have, and so I'm currently working with the County Office of Education, and I'm working with Dr. Babb, and we are working with program improvement schools. So that's why I'm sitting here. You're wondering, what is this woman doing here? Isn't quite sure what's going on. I had the pleasure of visiting your middle school and spending some time there observing classrooms. And I have to tell you, it was a real joy. You have some lovely children in that school. It was amazing. Middle school kids are not usually that well behaved. And very impressed with how well behaved they were and the commitment the teachers were making toward the education. And so it's my responsibility tonight to do the presentation for the middle school, and I'm really looking forward under Ellen's leadership to get back there in January and do some dipsticking into some of the classrooms. And then again, when we do in April our more formal presentation, I think you'll see some different dynamics and some different data when we come back in May or June to present to you. So jump right into it for the middle school. We want to commend the teachers for addressing significant issues in their site plan. They gave a clear and thoughtful presentation on their site plan before the board, which is always a difficult thing to do. Invested significant effort in revisiting sixth grade curriculum through grade level collaboration. Initiated and willingly collaborated with the high school and math departments to align the curriculum to the standards. Algebra 1 is a shared class, and it's extremely important that both middle school and high school are doing the same thing so that we're not confusing children as we go.
Let me pause here. I think it'll be quite exciting to learn that under the leadership of Ellen and John, the two schools, including Sarah, by the way, Cynthia being part of that, have now agreed on a common grading system so that when an A is recorded for the middle school in algebra, the high school knows that that's an A. That is, folks, historic. Usually high schools and middle schools just don't talk. And high schools tend to look at middle school math as less than what it ought to be. For them to willingly work and come to, and they're implementing in second semester, by the way. We're going to have them come before the board once they've implemented it. So we want to see if they're going to implement it first. So we'll have them come before the board in sometime second semester to give you a report of how they do it. You'll be proud of it.
Normally, you won't find 100% agreement coming to fruition on the first day. It will take time for both schools to coordinate, so there'll be some hiccups on the way. It always happens whenever you try to implement anything new. And this is a pretty drastic change in the way that we articulate between, especially math points. So it's going to be interesting to see exactly where they are and how it pans out. It may not be exactly how we want the initial tape, but at the end of the day, we're really moving. You will start to see that tighten up. And that's what we're looking for. We're looking for the initial hit and then tightening up on everything to really impact the student education. So it takes time. Educating students is not an easy task. It's getting more difficult today than it was when I was going to school. Things are more complicated all the way around. We had Pluto, for crying out loud. We don't have Pluto anymore. And I'm thinking things are changing so quickly now. You know, kids have to adjust to midstream. So how we deliver the instruction to the child is crucial. And we're not competing with Santa Paula. Yeah, we are. We're not competing with, but we're competing globally, truly. So we have to accelerate the rigor and put our emphasis on how our kids are going to compete in this marketplace. And that's where we're headed. So it's really when Michael told me about this, and then John Wilbur, the principal of the high school's comment was historic. Like this was an historic act that we have our teachers working together. This is how it should be, working together for the benefit of our kids. That's what we should be doing. No longer should we be in silos, isolated, thinking that we're going to do whatever we need to do. We all work together, and I shared this with a couple people. Every kid in this district belongs to every adult in this community. And when you see something happening, you correct that child. And one of the most difficult things for me as a principal is when I told someone, look at that. And the person told me it's not my class. We have a responsibility as adults to help all our children become better citizens, whether they're in your class or not. So this is really encouraging when we start to get people to, especially us adults, to start to focus on what we're here for, that's to make sure our kids are successful. And so I was very happy about it. This story, okay, John?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
And I think to add to that, I'll put my 2 cents in because it's hard not to. When Al and I were in school, those that went to college had some opportunities, but those that graduated from high school also had opportunities. They could go into several of the trades and have a fairly successful life. What we are finding today, that children that do not go on past high school, either for an advanced degree, a certificate program, a community college program, without that advanced education, we are looking at a life of poverty and even a life of, unfortunately, crime and health issues. The statistics are there, it's very real. So we can't get children passed into the trades right now because the standards are so high in the electrician, the plumbing, the construction industry getting into the apprenticeship program. And so we have got to take this on with a passion that we can't leave any child behind, as much as we hate that whole rigmarole. It's so true in today's society. So I encourage you to keep pushing forward with that very issue. Let's get back to the middle school, where we were very pleased with the approaches that we saw. They used a variety of approaches in the classrooms. There were daily routines in the classrooms, and there was relevant and accurate information in the lessons. Like the other 2 schools, the students again were very well behaved and very welcoming to us, and the campus was incredibly well maintained and very clean. The findings that we would like you to look at, first one is again a double asterisk, that in the classrooms where lesson plans were thoroughly prepared, you got what you expected, a much higher level lesson plan. I'll let you look at the evidence, and again, the recommendation is to continue to require daily lesson plans of the AGB board approved template, monitoring them closely for the quality, for the research-based teaching strategies, and the fidelity of standards. We now have all kinds of research that will tell us exactly what teaching standards we can get, what we call the most bang for our buck. When teachers use comparing and contrasting consistently, the scores on the standardized tests go up immeasurably. So we know there are certain things that we can do to really help students do that. And I'll let you read both the evidence and the EPCs. On finding 2, again, it's a double asterisk, consistent use of research-based teaching strategies. And there again, the county can help you with this, and I know we've talked about that, and there's some wonderful research out there on what best we can do. And contained in the walkthrough documents appear to be lacking across the curriculum area. We want to make sure all of those strategies are being used where they should be. The recommendations are develop a plan to train the staff in the standards and the strategies that support the California teaching standards, and then focus on the follow research-based strategies. And again, they're all listed there, and you've seen those. Finding 3, the majority of lessons were at the knowledge and comprehension level with little evidence of rigor demanded in the standard. For example, the standard expected students to analyze. We've got to make sure the lesson does that. When you get to about 7th grade, we really do move away from what we call the recall and the information stage, and the majority of our standards do move into the higher level skills. And it's really important that as we're doing this, not only do the students have the knowledge, but now we have to help them reach a little further and say, now that you have the knowledge, what are you going to do with it? How do you apply it? And so that really does require some very special teaching strategies to do that. The recommendation is to ensure through classroom observation and lesson plans that students are doing those higher level knowledges. We want to work with the staff to analyze standards to ensure that rigor intended by the standards is what's being implemented in the classroom, and ensure that lesson plans incorporate that higher level thinking, those higher level thinking skills. Finding 4 is again a double asterisk. Grade level standards are being taught in the majority of lessons observed, but did not teach to the rigor expected. Here again, reaching past that recall and information stage. 41% of lessons observed were teaching below those standard levels. Recommendations are to make sure we implement a vertical articulation during collaboration time to include awareness of standards above and below their grade level. And again, I want to reemphasize, I think Michael said that the 8th grade teachers are expecting those 7th grade students to come in with those language arts skills developed so they can extend their writing. They should not be simply doing simple sentences, topic sentence, 2 supporting sentences and a concluding sentence. Those are 3rd and 4th grade standards. They've got to be reaching beyond that, and the teachers have that responsibility to begin teaching. How do we write response to literature? And we can't do that without some of those basics being done. And again, the high school teachers I know expect 8th grade math students to come in with specific skills, 8th grade science students. Monitor lesson plans and classroom teaching to ensure instruction is at grade level or above, and of course with the rigor. Ensure that students or classes that are performing below grade level be taught at grade level standards with making sure we're scaffolding and research-based strategies. This is tough on teachers when they have to teach at this level and our students are still working down here. But what we don't want to do is come down here. We need to keep them here and develop those strategies to bring them up. And then plan staff development to continue building capacity and data-wise. And again, you've heard all about data-wise. Finding 6, instruction in the classroom is not appropriately differentiated for a diverse student population. And there again, we're putting a lot of responsibility on teachers to go from gate to our special ed students. But there's plenty of knowledge out there on how to do that. So again, we want to make sure that the lessons reflect appropriate strategies to address the needs of all students in the classroom. That the strategies definitely address our English language learners because they're probably the lowest in the district with our special education students. They're the ones we need to work on bringing up the most. And ensure that IEPs for special ed students are provided to the teachers and that the teachers attend the IEP meeting to discuss strategies to be used so that their recommendation in the IEP are put in place in the classroom. Finding 6, double asterisk, it's noted in interviews and the curriculum audit that work still needs to be done on course-specific pacing guides and common assessments that reflect student mastery. This is a true standard in professional learning communities that all classes are teaching the same thing. They don't teach it lockstep, but that you have a standard that we've determined we get the biggest bang for our buck and that all teachers in 7th grade science are teaching that standard, not their favorite unit on Pluto. I love Pluto too, but because I can remember Disney and remember the planet, but we've got to make sure that they're all doing that. And so the recommendation is work with departments to develop pacing guides based on grade levels, essential standards. Common assessments help us know where everybody in 7th grade is in science, social science, math. Without those common assessments, we don't know. You may be lucky enough to have one teacher that is very strong and another teacher that's really needing some additional work. And without all of them teaching the same thing, those 30 in that other teacher's class have lost out. Yes?
Let me ask you a question. You're talking about common assessments that we're using now in our classroom here with our teachers. With the new coming common assessments from the federal government, coming, with the 45 states or whatever it is. Are we using that now, because they're going to be more performance-based?
Right. Common assessments are a little different from the benchmarks. Benchmarks are things that the district has determined that, let's say, I'm going to make this up because I certainly am not as knowledgeable as I should be on your district, but at the end of every 9 weeks, we're going to give a test to make sure our kids are there.
I understand.
We don't want to wait 9 weeks. Teachers should be testing about 2 to 3 weeks the whole group of 7th grade math teachers. Small, short, 10-question, what we call a common assessment or a formative assessment to inform us if what we taught for the last 2 weeks students have learned. Because if we don't know that and we continue going, all we're doing is widening that gap.
So I guess I'm asking then, are those questions going to be a little more performance-based? Are they going to require more?
I can respond.
Yeah. I don't look at my.
No, well, only because I don't know your curriculum as thoroughly as I should.
The data-wise bank of questions will be revised in the spring to now include common core questions.
So higher level thinking.
Exactly.
Oh, yeah.
That's a good question. Exactly.
But when we're talking about pacing guides and formative assessments, these are the things that drive the instruction. So that we know at the end of, let's say, 2 weeks, 80% of my kids have got it. Now that's the benchmark in Tier 1 that says, okay, what we're doing is good. So then we just have to worry about these 20%. We've got to do some other things, some interventions, some different things. But at the end of 2 weeks, only 40% of my students have it. We have an issue. You don't move on. when you move on and you scaffold, but you also have to worry about what am I doing when they didn't get that. So we've got to make sure that's really in place. Finding 7, well, classrooms have learning goals posted. The majority of classes do not use in a meaningful manner to detail proficiency expectations of the lesson. Basically, it is when kids walk into your room, what do you expect to learn today? Today, by the end of class today, you will have learned how to write a topic sentence. And at the end of the class, this is what I'm going to do to make sure you're doing it. That's what we're looking for in every class, so that every student knows every day, every period, what their expectations are. Tell me what you expect from me so that I can make sure I can perform and give it to you.
And they're finding out that ownership really increases student achievement. When they start to own their work, own their progress, it really increases their performance.
You'll see things called ticket out the door. And this is some kind of evidence that says, I got it today, and here's the evidence. Either I'm writing on a 3x5 card a good topic sentence, I'm writing polynomials, I'm writing mitosis. It doesn't matter what it is, but we've got to tell them what they're expected to do, make sure they do it, and then summarize it at the end. Recommendations be work with staff to ensure that students have a clear understanding of the expectation and a variety of checking for understanding strategies. And checking for understanding is not, did all of you get that? And of course, every child at that age. And if that's the only checking for understanding we do, we've really failed kids. Work with staff to ensure that lessons feature explicit learning goals and are implementing district pacing guides and fidelity with, using the board adopted materials. Findings, 7 continue. Work with the staff to ensure that lessons begin with a clear reference to grade level standards as well as what the expectation are for the mastery. We have to show them what's an exemplary paragraph. What does mitosis look like? Work with math teachers to ensure students understand math concepts by attaching new learning to real-life examples that students can relate to and use the multiple approaches to do math associated with this concept. I don't know about you, but I sat through geometry going, huh? When am I ever going to use this? Well, you know what? There are plenty of times that I can use it. I wish somebody had told me, so I would have paid a little better attention to that. Finding 8 is a double asterisk. Well, most teachers observed were directly instructing students. A number of teachers were not doing high quality, intentional direct teaching necessary to ensure that students were able to access the content of the lesson. High quality instruction is not the sage on the stage, but we call it the guide on the side, but yield strategies that accurately involve students in the learning. It's been it's been designed to instruct by assessing your prior knowledge and using prior knowledge to build on and apply new information to foster skill development. It also includes modeling and interactive group instruction such as frequent verbal and nonverbal responses, think, pair, share, delves, probes, clues. Delves, probes, give clues that accomplishes the objective of the lesson. The recommendation be work with staff to ensure that intentional direct teaching is implemented in the classroom with fidelity. And then to plan staff development to ensure teachers have strategies that are actively engaging all students. Finding 9, student report cards do not reflect mastery of standards-based curriculum. This could probably be given to every district in California. It's very, very hard to do that in secondary schools because the colleges want GPAs. They don't care about standards-based. Well, if we standards-base them up to 8th grade, then begin starting with regular letter grades for GPAs, it's very tough on kids. So this is a difficult one, there's no question about it. Collect and review all department grading policies to determine if grades reflect mastery. This is critical to do. It's the reporting out that is difficult. Direct departments to review and analyze whether percentages assigned to homework, AR efforts, or other non-standard criteria truly apply when grading on mastery of standards. And we could spend the rest of the evening talking about is homework necessary and should homework be graded, but I'm sure you have much better things to do. But if you'd ever like to do that, I'm more than happy to talk to you about that. Textbook and core classes are not available to all students, resulting in ineffective use of time. We certainly know that, so we need to instruct the staff to require students to bring their textbooks when coming to class. Finding 11, given the length of time required to cover all essential standards during the year, the poetry project and AR and language arts department appear to utilize instructional time in classes for activities that may not address the rigor required to master grade level essentials. And so the recommendation is to ensure that valuable time be spent on analyzing original published works and exposing students to great authors and recognized literary works, and work with the staff to ensure AR-related activities do not encroach on instructional time in the classroom. The nice thing about testing is after testing is over in late April, early May, that does allow us to do some of the programs that teachers really do love and the kids get so much out of. But unfortunately, if they're not part of our STAR testing, we've got to be real careful about the amount of time that we dedicate to them. Yes?
I just want to, I had a question, go back to number 10 real quick on the textbooks.
Yes.
When you're saying that there aren't, all students don't have a textbook, is that because they're just not bringing them, or the teachers don't have them? Because it's not because they don't have enough, correct?
We have a textbook for every child,
Right.
but what's happening is that the textbooks are not required to be brought to class. They have a number of textbooks in the classroom, so when they have to refer to the textbook, what we have seen is that kids would share a textbook, or some will not have any at all. And so what we're saying is, hey guys, if the textbooks have been given to the kids, have them bring it to class, because they're not required to bring a textbook to class.
Okay, so where are the students supposed to keep their books? Because those books weigh a ton.
Oh, no, we understand that that's an issue.
Yeah.
All we're saying is that if you don't have a textbook in class,
Right.
then there's a problem. We cannot buy 2 sets. Funding is just not available.
No,
to
and
see
there
that.
should, I mean, everybody should have one. So is it possibly that maybe the teachers need to have a few extra ones in the classroom? Then for,
I really don't know at the time, at this moment, how to address that particular piece, except to say, we've got a problem here. I want them to work on it.
It's a loss of instructional time.
In other words, we're not here to solve the problem.
Definitely.
We're here to identify the problem and let staff figure out how to do it.
Okay, so there's 11 and 12 is the number of students in the opportunity class were working independently without the teacher, and the curriculum did not always match grade level standards. So the recommendation is to collect evidence the rest of this school year to determine the effectiveness of the program, and then make a recommendation at the end of the school year. 13 is students in 6th grade are receiving half a year verse science. Recommendation is to immediately consider adjusting 6th grade schedule to accommodate science without sacrificing other required curriculum areas. For example, extending your English language arts by half an hour to include the reading or STAR essentials, followed by half an hour of physical education to create a 50-minute block for earth science. Reading classes must engage students in skill development on how to read and comprehend grade level content area books to build academic vocabulary across the curriculum. And then in the 2012-13 school year, adjust the master schedule to implement a complete year for science while maintaining all required courses, including physical education. 14 overall strategies for EL learners are used infrequently.
I'm sorry, I want to go back to the previous one. What were the two, there were 2 grade levels, I believe, that are currently tested for science. I think it's like 3rd and 8th or something, is that correct?
For science, yes.
For science.
Yes.
So is that really what we're getting at here in this, that we're not addressing science sufficiently to prepare students for that test that's coming up in 8th grade?
That's part of the reason. But the other part of the reason is that unless students are given a full year course of earth science, they're missing out on the vocabulary development which our EL kids need so badly in order to progress through the system. So that when they get to high school and they are faced with the upper level science courses, they at least have gotten repeated background in science and the vocabulary that they need to engage those classes. That's what we're getting at. Not only the first course in the 8th grade, because they have a pretty good score in the 8th grade, if you look at it, in science. But what we're saying is that you need to make sure you provide them every year what's required, the minutes required to teach those classes.
And remember, the push from the federal government, of course, is the STEM whole initiative, so we want children to have as much exposure to science and math as technology.
Okay, so then does that happen all the way through the entire, like K through 12?
Well, it should
or is
be.
it-
Actually, K through 8, every year, kids should have a science course. If you don't give, when they get to the 6th grade, if you don't give them what's required, which is a year course of earth science, then they're missing out on that. What they have learned also is that our EL kids, we have a number of our EL kids who are stuck level 3. And they stay level 3 4, 5, 6 years. And what they've discovered is that those who are stuck level 3 are stuck because they do not have the academic vocabulary necessary to push them through. Dr. Nishino has been handing me tons of reading materials related to academic vocabulary development. And he already told me, Michael, I want this to happen. If our kids are going to move along and be able to compete academically, especially the EL kids, they have to have academic vocabulary. So I'm looking at that very seriously to see how we can implement it. Yes.
When we talk about the second bullet, number 13, reading classes must engage students in skill development. Is that what we're doing with AR?
No.
I mean, is AR doing that, increasing reading development? I mean, excuse me, engaging students in skill development of becoming better readers? Or is it just that they're reading more and more and more at grade level or below grade level and not really increasing their reading development?
Well,
I mean, this issue is coming up all the time.
Yeah, well,
So what's the effect of AR?
This one, though, is really dealing with being able to read and comprehend content area books. Like reading and comprehending your science book, which is different than literature books that you would read for AR. Or science books. And the only reason it's here is because when they're confronted with trying to find time to fit in the science and the reading that they want the kids to do, maybe having them read in the content area is another way to carve out time that gives the kids those skills in the science areas and uses their reading to get there. So that's why.
Also, let me also mention the core, and later on I'll be giving a presentation on the core and Common Core standards. I'm sure you've attended some of those presentations, but I'll give you a presentation on it sometime in the spring. What's happening also is that in the lower grades, it's 50-50, meaning 50 nonfiction, 50 fiction. As you move through the system, they're increasing. By the time you get to high school, non-fiction materials. It's like 70-30. And there's a reason for that. Because the companies, the businesses are finding out that kids are not able to read contracts, read technical books. You know, they can engage in literature, but when you talk about those types of reading materials, they can't handle them. And that's why the push, Common Core standard for non-fiction, that's why we threw that in there. Be able to read a technical, your textbook is a technical book. Okay, they need to be able to engage and read the textbooks.
Still finding out, and John and I went to the service, that the majority of the kids going to college, UCs or CSUs, are not passing their English or their math content. And part of that's because of the inability to do nonfiction and technical writing and technical reading. So we're looking at that. We were talking to John about that at high school, because they have a program now that the CSUs are sponsoring, that you train the teachers and then they have classes designed specifically for college entrance. That if you get a C or a better in this class with a trained teacher, you automatically bypass remedial English. And it's a huge issue right now on the number of kids that are not making it. So part of what's happening now with AR is, and I think John's talking about it, I've heard about it, is that the English teachers are working with the history teachers that have been reading in the history content area as both a history assignment and an AR assignment. Correct, John? And they're working on that. The goal is to move that now into science and other content areas. So it's not just literature, it's actually nonfiction technical areas as well. So, in my experience too, when you talk about reading, I could read words and do all, but my vocabulary was extremely weak coming from a second language background. And so that's exactly what a lot of our students face. And reading, I wish I read more. If you have children, and you have a reader and you have a non-reader, and when you look at the reader, they normally do better in school. As reading increases just common knowledge that you get. And when you're coming from a second language home, normally you don't have those rich conversations that use educational vocabulary or academic vocabulary. You're just simple, pass the salt, sit down, and don't say anything, whatever. But when you come from an educated family, normally you will get some other kind of content and knowledge that you wouldn't normally get. So part of the issues that I see here is we have to start to build the capacity of our children to have strong vocabulary and a wide breadth of knowledge that most people in America think is common. You know, and I shared this once before. In the 7th grade, I was in a class, and this is how important it is for language. I'm in the classroom, and they say, what did you talk about? What did you do over the summer? You know, it's my first year in 7th grade. I'm in the English class. And none of my students were there. All these other people I didn't even know, coming from a really high academic school. And I came from not a real high academic school. So I'm in the classroom, and they say, well, write about what you did. And I read it, says, okay, what did you have for DESSPRT? Okay. And I'm thinking, what did I have to dinner? I'm thinking, so I asked the girl next to me, what does that mean? Desert? What did I have for desert after I ate? And she said, no, dessert. And I said, what's dessert? And she said, you know, it's what you had after dinner. I said, what are you talking about? No, you have like ice cream or apple pie. I said, I never had ice cream after dinner. So those are the kinds of things that kids come in their background, they don't know. When I was my first trip to the cafeteria, right? Walking through the lunch line, never been 5th grade, never been to the cafeteria. Walking through the lunch line, and there's this green stuff in the bottom of this thing. And I said, what's that? She said, that's spinach. I said, that isn't spinach. Yeah, that's spinach. Like, you know, it's all watery. Because in Japanese culture, spinach, you get it, and you boil it, you squeeze it, and you put it on a little dish condiment, you put a little sesame seed. That's the only spinach I have ever seen. So I'm arguing with her. At that thing, she's saying that's spinach, and I was pretty aggressive. I said, that's spinach. And so arguing, so finally she says, finally she says, do you want some or not? I said, no, I'll take the corn. But, and when you reflect back on your background, that's what some of our students are coming into school with a different background knowledge. And I found out with my daughter and my son, my daughter loves to read, my son was like me, didn't like to read. So sometimes when you read, you just get this knowledge. I don't care what you read, you know, it doesn't matter. You get this knowledge and most homes, if you're a migrant worker or you're first generation, something, you don't have that rich background. And sometimes we forget. And many of us who are teachers, I'm a first college graduate, but many of us come from educated homes. And sometimes what you think is normal is not normal for kids who grew up differently. And so we have to differentiate. And somewhere in the early grades, we really have to concentrate on giving our kids access to vocabulary. That's the key to success. I'm finding out. When I didn't know his analogy, I'm good at that. I really, hand is to a glove, as a foot is to a shield. But when they said Aristotle is to Socrates and Hercules is to some, I'm thinking, what are they talking about? That's background knowledge that you get when you're educated, as opposed, because if you don't know what they're talking about, how can you make the analogy? So that's why I'm so obsessed with academic vocabulary for our kids, especially here. We need to really focus on building vocabulary for our kids. You don't get it at home like some of us did when we were growing up. And so I just read a couple more articles I'm going to give Michael that talks about, I'm not taking these over there. So I have my too much time on that. So I got to come right here. Developing student vocabulary helps beat achievement gap.
Alan, between you and Lucy, I have enough.
I know. So I get passionate about this because I think part of the reason why we're not doing as well as we can because we have not done all the foundation work that is necessary to our kids. We have to really give them a strong foundation. And that happens with rigor, high expectations, and efficacy. Do we really believe we make a difference? Do we really believe that we can change and make a student successful? If you don't believe that, you're right, it won't happen. If you don't believe, you will not achieve, right, Lois? That was Lois Mark. Believe and you will achieve. And so we as educators need to believe that we make a difference in the lives of kids. And if you start to say, oh, it's their fault, or it's the parents' fault. I used to hear that all the time when I was a principal. Well, that's not our problem. Kids are different. Parents are not the same. And so the teacher said, so what are you going to do? You're right. We don't have the same kind of kids you did 20 years ago. We don't have the same kind of parents we did 20 years ago. So what are you going to do about it? If I'm a coach and I can't do an end run, I'm going to do off tackle. And if I can't go off tackle, I'm going to throw it to the screen. I'm going to do something. But I'm not going to keep doing the same thing and then blame it on the other team for stopping me. That's what we're doing. We need to find a better way to reach our kids, and we're going to do that. And I think it's happening. I'm so proud of the work that we're doing. I'm so proud of the effort that we're putting forth for our kids. So I'm done with it.
Okay. We talked about our EL learners. We want to make sure that we are focusing on those strategies and the kids are getting them every day in class. 15, based on department visits, all departments, but 1 were engaged in discussions on agenda topics. The recommendation, ensure all departments establish group norms for collaborative time, instruct the departments to create agendas anchored in specific topics, require minutes of each meeting with clear outcomes, and observe and monitor collaboration. And I believe that's it. Michael, are you going to go into the next steps?
Yes. What we're asking the sites for the next steps is, first of all, to make sure that they address the double asterisks. They have to address all of them, but giving full attention to those that are double asterisks. And then secondly, we're asking them within 30 days, 30 school days, the principal and the staff are directed to submit to the AGB board a copy of the plan to implement the recommendations as approved by the board. So within 30 days, so that takes them through the end of January. Give them time to work together and then submit to us the next step form that I have alluded to in my introduction. And that concludes the presentation to you. We thank you again for listening to the whole findings, recommendations, and as you can tell, we have taken the work seriously. The board has taken the work seriously. That you have charged us, and we presented to you our best recommendation to turn the district around. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mike. Okay, any board comments or questions?
No, I just wanted to say it's obviously, a lot of man hours, a lot of work, and I know it's just as much as the teachers are working, this is hard, the committee is doing this, and like I said, it's all for the best of our children, and I just, as a board member, and I think all of us just really appreciate all the time, all the effort that everyone's putting into this, because it is a team effort, and happy to be on the team.
My only concern is that we have the accountability in here, and it's directed at the superintendent. We had a curriculum audit, as was mentioned earlier, and we never really followed through with it. In fact, I don't know if those of us that are board members have ever really read through the whole document. And I find a lot of similarities. I read the documents. I read all 3, and what you see here makes a lot of references to the curriculum audit that we had back in 2007. And so I just hope that we don't drop the ball on this one, because as we do, and as you've said in the past, in our private conversations, that we're behind. I look at Anna, and it's great to see Anna, because she took over at Moore Park High School when it was at this level, and her job was to take us up, and she did. So I just hope that we can continue this conversation and continue this this procedure that we're in now. and to be positive about it.
Let me tell you, say two things. Hope is not a strategy. So we are doing more than hope. We're putting in place. You know what? There's a kernel of truth there. What gets monitored gets done. What gets monitored gets done. That's why you see a lot of places in there where we're going to be dipsticking, where we have show us the evidence. And so I think if anybody, you know, when I was playing baseball in Long Beach, I had good hand. They call it 11 meter. I never fumbled. I had very good hand. I never made errors. So I didn't hit one, but I never made anything. So I think part of that, I don't drop too many things. And it's one of the things I don't do. I monitor very well. And I do very many things well. Wife's side. But I tell you what, I do have people on my staff and my principals who are taking this very seriously. And we will monitor and help our staff do what's necessary. We're going to assist them as much as we can to do the right thing for our kids. And I think you have a committed staff. You can see the work they've done. I'm going to ask the parents too who watch this YouTube, and we ramble on, that they take part of this as well. This is a community effort. It's not just teachers, it's not just administrators. It's everybody. Everybody's responsible for everybody in this community. And once that happens, you will see a synergy, and you will see things that be ubiquitous, and you will see a lot of things happening with gracious kids. The reason I say those words is because it was in here. Because the guy was telling the story how he talked to his kids like that, he's educated, they didn't know those words. Okay? And those are vocabulary words. You can take the GRE or this, that's what's on there. So if you've never seen or heard the word, you're not going to know anything about it. And I was really good at trying to put things together, see a word and then read it and then say, oh, that must mean this. Well, sometimes you're right, sometimes you're wrong. It's always better to know it if that word is in context here. So I think don't have to worry about that, Tony. We'll have things in place, checkpoints. We'll be dipsticking a lot. We'll be asking for data. We'll be asking for information. And at the end of the year, if I ever get it done, we will have a superintendent's quality indicators that will talk about all the things that happen in every school, including test scores, absences, suspensions, truancy, all those things we put on the chart where you can look across and see what have we done. And then you do that every year, then the goal, like Anna did, is to move it up so that it becomes better and better as you go here. Yeah, we did that back. Dolores, didn't we have quality indicators with our superintendent? He put our scores out, that was back in the 80s. Put our scores out there, everybody saw where you were, ranked us according to where you were on your test scores. Okay, where you were in the suspension, so we were pretty competitive back then. Nobody wanted to be at the bottom of the page. Everybody wanted at the top of the page. And so that was motivation for us because he hired very good people to become administrators, in my opinion. We have 6 of them now who went through that system were superintendents and put your family. 6. We have 4 that work at the county in high levels, associate superintendents. Came out of the era that Dolores and I came. It was hard work. We worked hard, but we developed a lot of good people in that district. And so I think Fillmore, I didn't say hope, I think Fillmore can be there. We just need to work hard to make sure. And we're all people listening to me. We all have ownership in this. Everybody, not just here in this room, but everybody needs to step up if you want this to be a place where you want kids to grow up. So, here's my answer.
Great. Well, I guess as for me, I'm just really excited, Michael. I think what the program that you've outlined is comprehensive. It's obviously you've done a lot of your homework, and I'm really looking forward to seeing it executed. So, thank you very much for your work. Okay. Any other comments from the board members?
Basically, ditto. It's evident all the work that went into this. And I really did go through this as thoroughly as I could, and it's exciting to me, all the changes I think that we are striving for, and I think with the leadership in place that's here, I have no doubt. I'm excited. It's all nothing but exciting. But,
okay, so with that, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, it's 5-0. we approve the recommendations.
Thank you very much. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you, team.
Okay, with that, we're on to item I, future meetings. We have meetings on January 17th, February 7th, March 6th, and March 20th, with 5:30 p.m. Closed sessions followed by 6:30 p.m. regular meetings. Board members, any people not going to be able to make any of these meetings? Looks like everyone will be attending. Perfect. And then last, item J, board closing comments on agenda building. Anything on agenda building, board members? No? Any final comments from anyone? No? Hearing none, okay, we're on to item K. I need a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Okay, second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? We're adjourned.
Aye.